many other...
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION live broadcast from London. I'm Laura Makin-Isherwood and our top focus in this bulletin remains on the ongoing developments in Afghanistan. But first, the headlines. Hours after Western officials warned of an imminent attack, 2 Islamic State suicide bombers target Kabul airport, leaving at least 90 dead, including 13 US troops. Islamic State Khorasan, or ISIS-K, an affiliate of the ISIS group which previously battled US forces in Syria and Iraq, says it carried out the suicide attack at Kabul airport, targeting fleeing Afghans and US service members. A day after the Kabul blasts, anxious to leave, many Afghans are still waiting outside Kabul International Airport in an attempt to flee the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan.
We will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
Moment of silence before taking questions from the press. The US has affirmed that it will not stop ongoing evacuations. More than 100,000 people have been taken out of the US-controlled Kabul airport since the international airlift began on August the 14th. Britain is in its final stages of the evacuation programme and will end the process today. Britain is no longer accepting people for flights out of Kabul beyond those already inside the airport. Turkey is yet to make a final decision on a Taliban request for support to run Kabul airport after foreign forces withdraw. President Erdogan says talks are still underway.
Beklentileri nedir? Bizim beklentimiz nedir?
Twin suicide bombs rocked Kabul airport on Thursday as crowds of Afghans queued up in the hope of getting on evacuation flights. The Islamic State Khorasan has claimed responsibility for the suicide attack that has left at least 90 dead, including 13 US soldiers, women and children. The terror attack has shaken the already frantic evacuation efforts. US President Joe Biden has vowed to punish those behind the attack.
The 26th of August 2021. While thousands of Afghans continued to gather at the gates of the Hamid Karzai airport in Kabul in a desperate attempt to flee. At around 6 p.m. local time, a suicide bomb ripped through the crowds outside the airport, leaving several dead bodies piled up. Panic deepened and the Taliban opened fire at the airport. As the injured were being rushed to hospitals, within minutes, a second suicide bomb went off near Baron Hotel, close to the airport's perimeter, creating scenes of terror and devastation. At least 90 people were killed, including 13 US troops, and over 150 were injured. The fatalities also included women and children. Reports say that at least 28 Talibs also died in the explosions. The first explosion at the Abbey Gate of the Kabul airport took place near a sewage canal, where some Afghans were waiting to be processed. Many of them were blown into the water. Videos shared on social media showed men and women in a tangled mess in the shin-deep water of the drainage canal. Survivors, stunned by the blasts, pulled themselves to their feet and began pulling out bodies from the drainage canal. Others were desperately shouting for help and searching the carnage for loved ones. Reports say there were 7 explosions in Kabul last night. 2 near the airport and 5 are presumed to have been carried out by the US forces. The airport bombings, claimed by the Islamic State group, came hours after Western governments had warned of a possible terror threat and asked their citizens to stay away from the airport. US President Joe Biden, who has been facing immense criticism over his administration's handling of the crisis, vowed to punish those responsible.
We will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
The Islamic State jihadists, rivals of the Taliban, have been responsible for some of the deadliest attacks in Afghanistan and Pakistan in recent years. The terror outfit has massacred civilians at mosques, shrines, public squares, and even hospitals.
Security remains tightened in the city, with threat alerts being issued for today as well, given that today is the day of Friday, and people and the Taliban, which are currently in charge, are trying their best to prevent any untoward incident. We're yet to see an investigation team being announced on yesterday's incident. Anas Malik in Kabul, Afghanistan, for WION World is One.
The deadly twin blast outside Kabul airport has shaken the US administration. US officials initially said that 11 Marines and 1 Navy medic had died in the attack. Another service member died hours later. A total of 18 service members have also been wounded, and the death toll could grow. When US President Joe Biden addressed the nation from the White House, his voice was cracking. He bowed his head for a moment of silence before taking questions from the press. Backlash against the Biden administration over an alleged botched withdrawal is growing. However, Biden has stood firm on this decision. He believes that the situation could not have been dealt with any differently. In the latest address, he warned the attackers that the US will hunt them down and make them pay.
To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay. I will defend our interests and our people with every measure at my command. Here's what you need to know. These ISIS terrorists will not win. We will rescue the Americans who are there. We will get our Afghan allies out. And our mission will go on. America will not be intimidated. And I have the utmost confidence in our brave service members who continue to execute this mission with courage and honor to save lives and get Americans, our partners, our Afghan allies out of Afghanistan.
The US general in charge of evacuations has said that the attacks would not stop the US from continuing its operations. The head of US Central Command, General Frank McKenzie, has said that alternate routes are being used to get evacuees inside the airport.
The threat from ISIS is extremely real. We've been talking about this for several days. We saw it actually manifest itself here in the last few hours with an actual attack. We believe it is their desire to continue those attacks, and we expect those attacks to continue. And we're doing everything we can to be prepared for those attacks. That includes reaching out to the Taliban, who are actually providing the outer security cordon around the airfield, to make sure they know what we expect them to do to protect us. And we will continue to coordinate with them as they go forward.
The blast comes just hours after foreign troops were warned a major attack was imminent. Afghans and foreign nationals were asked to stay away from Kabul airport. However, the warning was largely ignored by Afghan nationals who are desperate to make their way out of the country. Thursday's attack has further intensified political pressure on Biden from all sides. Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has called on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to bring the chamber back into session. He demanded a debate on legislation that would prohibit the US withdrawal until all Americans are out of Afghanistan. Pelosi has dismissed such suggestions as empty stunts. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik said that the humanitarian disaster is a result of Biden's weak and incompetent leadership. She has also called him an unfit commander-in-chief. Another Republican senator, Marsha Blackburn, tweeted that Biden and his top national security staff should resign and face an impeachment trial. WION's correspondent Susan Tarani gets us more details.
Following the deadly terrorist attacks in Afghanistan, a long list of GOP lawmakers are calling on U.S. President Joe Biden to either resign or be impeached. Now, most of these are happening on social media. For example, Nikki Haley, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, favors Joe Biden's resignation, however, expresses concern about leaving Vice President Kamala Harris in charge. Similarly, Senator Josh Hawley tweets, he's a Republican from Missouri, by the way, that Joe Biden must resign. But perhaps the strongest words came from a Republican congresswoman here in New York, Elise Stefanik, who wrote, quote unquote, Joe Biden has blood on his hands and the buck stops with him. This after we heard that 12 service members lost their lives in Afghanistan due to that terrorist attack. All of this comes as Joe Biden sees his polling numbers among the American public also plummet for his handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Susan Tehrani from New York for WION World is One.
At the briefing, US President Joe Biden was asked by a reporter if he bore any responsibility for all that has been unfolding in the last 2 weeks. This is what he said.
Do you bear any responsibility for the way that things have unfolded in the last 2 weeks?
I bear responsibility for fundamentally all that's happened of late. But here's the deal. You know, I wish you'd one day say these things. You know as well as I do that the former president made a deal with the Taliban that he would get all American forces out of Afghanistan by May 1. The reason why there were no attacks on Americans, as you said, from the date until I came into office, was because the commitment was made by President Trump, I will be out by May 1st. In the meantime, you agree not to attack any Americans. That was the deal. That's why no American was attacked. Imagine where we'd be if I had indicated on May the 1st I was not going to renegotiate an evacuation date. We were going to stay there. I'd have only one alternative: pour thousands of more troops back into Afghanistan to fight a war that we had already won relative to why the reason we went in the first place. As I've said 100 times, terrorism is metastasized around the world. We have greater threats coming out of other countries, a heck of a lot closer to the United States. We don't have military encampments there. We don't keep people there. We have over-the-horizon capability to keep them from going after us. Ladies and gentlemen, it was time to end a 20-year war. Thank you so much.
The attacks on Kabul airport are a tragic moment in the attempt to bring 20 years of US operations in Afghanistan to a close. 13 American troops, over 90 civilians, including women and children, were all killed in the deadly suicide bomb attacks near Kabul airport. But US President Joe Biden, despite criticism, has reaffirmed the August 31st withdrawal date.
Just 5 days before the scheduled completion of the Afghanistan evacuation, 2 deadly suicide bomb attacks rocked the Kabul airport. But the US administration says it will not be intimidated and its mission will continue till the last date.
These ISIS terrorists will not win. We will rescue the Americans there. We will get our Afghan allies out, and our mission will go on. America will not be intimidated.
In an address, US President Joe Biden reaffirmed the August 31st pullout date and remained undeterred from the mission to evacuate thousands of Americans and at-risk Afghans from the conflict-ridden country.
That still presents the opportunity for the next several days between now and the 31st to be able to get them out. And our military, and I believe, to the extent that we can do that, knowing the threat, knowing that we may very well have another attack, the military has concluded that's what we should do. I think they're right.
August 26th was the worst day of casualties for the United States forces in Afghanistan in over a decade. More than a dozen American troops lost their lives in the suicide terror attack. While the Pentagon develops plans to strike back at ISIS Khorasan, who has claimed responsibility for the attack, Biden has promised that US evacuations will continue. Without giving any indication of a change in next Tuesday's US pullout target. Biden even told the military that he would grant additional forces if needed.
We will respond with force and precision at our time, at the place we choose, in the moment of our choosing. Here's what you need to know. These ISIS terrorists will not win. We will rescue the Americans there. We will get our Afghan allies out, and our mission will go on.
But dashing the hopes of several Afghans, the White House has indicated a fragmented evacuation.
At a time where the Taliban is taking over the country, certainly not our preference, as you all know well. It is not going to be possible for every single Afghan, millions potentially, who want to leave Afghanistan to be evacuated. At the same time, I think you also heard the President make clear that there is not an end to our commitment to getting American citizens out, who are not ready to leave, and to getting partners out and those who have served alongside the United States over the last 20 years.
The United States have evacuated more than 100,000 people from Afghanistan since August 14th. Around 1,000 more Americans and many more at-risk Afghans are still waiting to be evacuated. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The world is now watching Kabul International Airport, and amid both the aftermath of the twin blasts and the humanitarian crisis unfolding, foreign countries are continuing to evacuate their nationals and Afghans. Spain is the latest country to end their evacuation process in Afghanistan. The last 2 military flights arrived in Dubai early this morning. In a statement, the government has said that with these 2 flights, the Spanish evacuation of its Afghan collaborators and their families has been completed. Countries are wrapping up the process as the 31st of August deadline is now just 4 days away.
Well, we at 4:30 this morning, the UK time, closed the Barons Hotel, shut the processing centre, and the gates were closed at Abbey Gate. And we will process those people that we have brought with us, the 1,000 people approximately inside the airfield now, and we will seek a way to continue to find a few people in the crowds where we can, but overall the main processing has now closed, and we have a matter of hours.
Britain is also going to end its evacuations in a matter of a few hours. Around 8 or 9 flights are left to depart from Kabul, but British troops will leave over the next few days. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace pressed that military personnel would leave before the deadline of August the 31st. The UK has managed to remove about 1,000 people every day from Afghanistan. We are getting you these visuals from London's Heathrow Airport, where the latest flight of evacuees has landed, and British Home Secretary Priti Patel met with them in person. Experts have said that more attacks in Kabul could follow. So, as a precautionary measure, Britain has issued a notice to all its airlines to avoid flying below 25,000 feet. Australia has officially ended its operation in Afghanistan. In fact, just hours before the attack, Australia's last military jet took off from Kabul airport, carrying some of its top army officials and Afghan nationals. Some Australian visa holders still remain in Afghanistan, though. It's not yet clear how they will be brought back. The United States is assisting other countries like Australia in evacuations, but the country's Prime Minister Scott Morrison warned that it was unlikely Australians and visa holders would be given seats. In the last 9 days, Australia has evacuated over 4,000 people from what it calls one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Canada has also ended evacuations from Kabul's airport. Military flights evacuated around 3,700 people. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that closing of the air bridge does not mean the end of Canada's connection to Afghanistan.
But our commitment to resettle over 20,000 Afghans in Canada in the coming months and years, our work to continue to support people in the region, our continued work to put pressure on the Taliban alongside our international allies to allow people to leave Afghanistan and come to safety in Canada will continue. This particular moment is done, and it's heartbreaking to see, but there is much more to do, and Canada will continue to be there for Afghans and the Afghan people.
Germany has concluded its air bridge mission in Kabul too. The last plane took off on the evening of the 26th and headed towards Tashkent. The defence minister has confirmed that all German soldiers, members of the foreign ministry and the federal police have been evacuated. German military planes have airlifted more than 5,000 people from 45 nations, including 500 Germans and more than 4,000 Afghans. France is still seeking to evacuate hundreds more people from Afghanistan ahead of a looming deadline. So far, around 2,600 Afghans have been evacuated. This includes 125 French men and women, 40 non-French nationals and 2,000 Afghans who were at risk. And the art of traditional carpet making in Kyrgyzstan seems in danger of disappearing a decade ago, but the popularity of these highly ornamented textiles is making a comeback. They're now the central attraction of a national festival being held to mark the 30th anniversary of Kyrgyzstan's independence. We leave you with this report. Thanks for watching WION.
Shidduch was bought as a legacy Shidduch. It is over 60 years old. It turns out that my mother-in-law did it herself at the age of 25 to 30. At the time, there was no sheep's wool, so she had to make a mixture of poor quality sheep's and usable goat's wool, adding a little bit of white wool. It was made in the traditional way. The wool was laid on shai, poured with boiling hot water, caked with feed, and this way felt is obtained.
This is the only festival in Kyrgyzstan that has been held annually for 10 years without interruption. From the very first time I organized it with pleasure. All interested artisans participate and I'm leading the project. Every year we're improving the event, making it better. We're getting bigger and bigger.
This is right, Arab.